Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, the last time we were with this wonderful audience of ours, we were doing Michigan Monday, talking about the fact that the Michigan offense, boy, they were terrible. They can't throw the ball at all. They don't have any wide receiver talent. But boy, their defensive line is dominant. So today, we're going to flip the script. Tony, we're going to talk about the incredible Ohio State wide receivers, the offense that just cannot be stopped. How's the defensive line? How impactful? Well, it's okay.
Yeah, rewatching this one, it is interesting rewatching it after you've consumed some criticism of the play. And as coaches say, it's never as good as it looks, or never as good as it seems, never as bad as it seems. And then you kind of go in and watching and like looking for it. And then you get like, well, watch out for confirmation bias and all of these things. Just, that's why, Tom, I always just clear my brain. I just go ahead and clear it out. I say, get out of there, you thoughts. And I turn the game on. And at first, I hope there's a good copy on YouTube. That's always fantastic because the DVR on when you cut the cord, DVR is a little bit slow. And it's a little clunky, but YouTube is fantastic. So did a little rewatch, Tom, and we'll go back and we'll just, throw some things back and forth. Let me go first because I'm sure you'll get into some stuff that Ross has been talking about and on Twitter, and we can discuss that as well. But Jordan Hancock he's not the most underrated player because we are always talking about all these underrated players. He's certainly one of the most underrated players because I think they're really, really going to miss him when he's gone. And Lorenzo Styles Jr. played really well in this one, and he's probably like the next guy up at nickel, perhaps. But like, Jordan Hancock is an active run defender. He is an extra. He is that third linebacker. When everybody's like, "Hey, you have 4-3 defense," like, well, he's very, very good in run support. He's very, very good in coverage, as we know. He's very, very good in blasting through blockers to try and blow up screens out wide, which I like. All of these things that I'm talking about, he did in the first drive. And now, of course, that was a touchdown drive, but he is very active, very disciplined, very talented, and he's basically the perfect nickel. And when they do finally lose him, Lorenzo Styles or Jr. or whomever is going to have a lot to live up to because Jim Knowles asks him to do a lot and he successfully does it. And it's just fun to watch. I know Lathan Ransom flashes around and he gets a ton of attention. We talk about him because he's the most underrated Buckeye. Caleb Downs, who everybody knows, I just saw that he was the highest graded safety this week for PFF. We can throw that in quotes in terms of what that means, but it's really difficult for this defense to work if you don't have a solid nickel, and they've got to be on solid nickel right now.
He feels a lot to me. He's a little bit of a different player than Shaun Wade, but he feels a lot like Shaun Wade, where when Shaun Wade was in the slot for Ohio State in 2019, he was just so good and so reliable and made so many big plays. And, with a team where Jeff Okudah is the third overall pick and Chase Young is the second overall pick or whatever it was, you kind of get a little bit lost. You get a little bit forgotten there. But as soon as Shaun Wade was no longer in the slot for the Ohio State defense, oh boy, did people remember Shaun Wade and appreciate Shaun Wade more than they probably did while he was there. Jordan Hancock feels like he might be very much the same thing because you've got Caleb Downs, who has the first team freshman All-American credentials from last year, and you've got Denzel Burke, who was probably going to be a borderline, if not straight up first round pick last year and came back. And you've got Davis Igbinosun, who's, known for being so physical. And you've got Lathan Ransom, who's put up the numbers. And it's like, oh yeah. And then the fifth guy is Jordan Hancock, who, you can, not the same position as Ronnie Hickman. And Ronnie Hickman did not have a great final season at Ohio State, but it was 2021 that he had the really, really good season at safety. It just feels like a good safety is someone who you appreciate, but you don't completely appreciate until they're gone. And Jordan Fuller was kind of the same way when he was at Ohio State. And it's like, as soon as they're gone, and then you've got Isaiah Pryor back there or whoever else, it's like Marcus Hooker, everyone kind of goes, oh man, can we find another year of eligibility for Jordan Fuller? Can we find another year of eligibility for Shaun Wade? Those are guys who really are probably underappreciated. But yeah, he had a great game. That whole secondary played a good game. I know they gave up a lot of yardage in the passing game, especially early. But a lot of it was either quick throws into tight windows where the coverage is there, and it's just there were not a lot of guys running wide open. There were not a lot of horrendous plays. There were some nice throws. Marshall had some wide receivers who made nice plays in tight windows. So I walked away thinking, from the game, I thought, oh boy, I don't know how well the Ohio State secondary played. And then I watched it, and it was kind of like, yeah, it's fine. It wasn't the greatest game they've ever played, but we talked after the game. They kept things very vanilla. They did not rush the passer a lot. So you had times where, and the pass rush, when they were just rushing forward, did not get there. And we'll get to the defensive line in a little bit. But if the quarterback has 4 seconds in the pocket to throw, 4.5 seconds in the pocket to throw, at some point, a receiver is going to come open. Like that just, you can't give a quarterback that much time. There was a lot of kind of quick game stuff they got out, and then there were times when they didn't, and they had a lot of time to throw. But at some point, it's not really just on the secondary, it's on the defensive line.
What you
got? So let's see. Let's talk about the defensive line. Boy, Tony, they missed Tyleik Williams. Boy, howdy, did they miss Tyleik Williams. We came into the season and left the spring with the idea that, boy, the depth of the interior defensive line is going to be, it's one of the question marks. And that's a little bit of a luxury for that to be one of your question marks. But when Tyleik Williams was not there, you noticed that Tyleik Williams was not there. They kind of shuffled guys through. Hero Canoe started, was okay, but not super impactful. You saw, they shuffled guys through there at both defensive tackle positions through the course of the game. You saw a bunch of Jason Moore. You saw a bunch of Cade McDonald. You saw a bunch of Tywone Malone. And for the most part, those guys were just kind of okay. There was not a lot of pressure, especially from the interior guys. There was not a ton of push in the interior of the defensive line. There were guys who felt like they were probably not in the right spot at times when you were rewatching. And even the edges, there was a play in that first drive where JT Tuimoloau got way upfield, and it turned into a long run. It opened up a huge hole on the left side of the defensive line where it was, Larry Johnson talks about not wanting to get behind the quarterback and not, rushing, but rushing in your lane. It just felt like Tuimoloau just kind of got himself out of position on that one. And that was one of the longest plays of the game for Marshall. And it's just that one little thing. They were very, very vanilla for most of the game, but okay, they're keeping things simple. I'm sure Jim Knowles has other things in his plans for later in the season. And yes, they were missing Tyleik Williams, and yes, they were rotating guys very, very deeply throughout the game. It was still a little concerning to just see just the real lack of consistent pass rush out of that defensive line.
Yeah, it kind of goes into one of the things I have here, and that's just the need for the defensive line to win their one-on-ones, at least those who have the one-on-ones, because not everybody's getting a one-on-one on the defensive line, as we know. But that's with the passing game. That's with the run defense when Marshall would split out 4 receivers and then Ohio State would match that and just have 5 guys in the box. And then Marshall could just outnumber the box and do what they wanted with the running game and ask the middle linebacker to defend both the running back and the quarterback and then deal with the blocker in there. So Larry Johnson and Jim Knowles, frankly, of course, they're asking those defensive linemen to win their battles, to even up the numbers and dispatch with their one-on-one and then get to the ball. And it's a tough ask, but it led to 130 some passing yards, and the running game eventually got stifled. So I think the defensive line eventually started winning those. But should you eventually start winning battles up front against Marshall, or should you always be winning the battles up front against Marshall? And, they had 2 drives in the game. the first drive was 3 for 3 on third downs, and Stone Earl was really elite in ball placement on a couple of those third downs, just outside of a defender's hand. So credit him. But yeah, overall, like it's a tough ask what they were doing, what Jim Knowles was doing with the line and then the linebacker. But it worked. And how often do we talk about on Michigan Monday? It's like they're not looking to be pretty. They're just looking to be effective. Keep stuff, just get through the game and get guys reps, get guys experience, get everybody in there. This kind of felt like that. And as you said, it was really, really hot. And all of these different factors that we talk about, it's like, oh, those are just excuses. It's like, well, they exist. They're there and they were part of the game. So it's okay to throw it in there. But yeah, I think you want to see that your senior defensive ends winning more. And Jack Sawyer is fantastic against the run. The pass rush, we know there's a lot of quick throws and things like that, so it's tough to get in there. But I do think they'll get more creative. I just wonder what happens when other coaches see this and they're like, you know what, let's just see if we can also outnumber them in the box by spreading things out and get some yards that way if this is how Ohio State's going to handle it. And if the defensive line isn't going to be winning as much up front, then this will give opponents an opportunity to make some hay a little bit.
Well, I watched this game right after I rewatched the Michigan game, and it sort of struck me that as soon as Marshall got away from their guy who could both run and throw because he got hurt, everything came to a screeching halt. When you had the second quarterback who came in, Braxton, he came in and he was not an accurate passer, and they didn't have to respect that. And they picked up a first down here or there, but it was not anything that was a real concern after that. So when you're looking ahead at the Michigan game, yeah, I'm guessing that Ohio State's going to have a much more aggressive game plan in the Michigan game. You keep your safeties back, but you can rush, you can blitz those linebackers, run blitz the linebackers, run blitz your corners if you don't have to respect the opposing quarterback and the opposing passing game. So we'll see. We'll see whether Alex Orji is the sole starter for Michigan by the time that game rolls around. But I think everyone looks at a game like this and goes, well, if Marshall can push them around a little bit up front, what is Michigan going to do? It's like, well, is Tyleik Williams back? If Tyleik Williams is back, boy, that makes a difference. And then if they're a little more aggressive, that makes a difference. So yeah, I think there's probably, I don't look at this and go, boy, this is going to be a major problem against Michigan right now. If they defend it this way against Michigan, yeah, I don't think they're going to defend it this way against Michigan. So
I mean, it's just simple numbers and things like that. It's it's not rocket science, and this was, as you said, pretty vanilla.
All right, so let's see what else. How about this? Carnell Tate had a really good day blocking on the outside. Felt like there were on the long Emeka Egbuka touchdown run. Carnell Tate had a really good block way downfield. He had I think it was a Travion Henderson run, a long run. Carnell Tate had a really good block on the edge. There were just a few times, like 3-4 times that I noticed, like, oh, that was a really good downfield block, and it was Carnell Tate. So that's something that I just felt like needed to be called out, because you look at his numbers, and his numbers are not the most exciting numbers in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And he was the only one who didn't have a long touchdown reception of the 3 starting receivers. But that's something that Emeka Egbuka's long touchdown reception came partly because Carnell Tate had some really good downfield blocking. And I think it was one of the other long touchdown runs by one of the running backs. There was a good block by Carnell Tate that kind of sprung it. So that felt like something that's one of those things we will probably hear from the coaches at some point, that he's done a pretty good job blocking. And I didn't go through and rewatch every play specifically to watch his blocking, but it was just several times that I noticed him and thought, oh, that was a good block.
Was it the Western Michigan or Akron where he planted a dude like 20 yards downfield on the sideline? I think he enjoys that portion of the game. But again, if you're going to play receiver at Ohio State, you're going to have to enjoy that portion of the game. and those guys do. Tell you, while we're talking about blocking, I'll throw in Will Kazmarek, who was the tight end on Quinshon Judkins' 86-yard run. And as that play is starting, you've got the edge or perhaps an outside linebacker just come crashing down, and Will Kazmarek just holds him up, and Quinshon Judkins just goes right behind Kazmarek. Like, it was like Will Kazmarek just picked this dude up. He's like, I'm going to put you on the dresser. We're going to put some socks on you, get you ready for Sunday school, and I'm going to put you back down and send you out to the car, because he stoned him completely, and Judkins was gone out the gate from there. And I think that's something we've talked about for a while now about what Will Kazmarek can do. And even back in the winter, we talked about how we were hearing that they loved his physicality. And this is the benefit of having a big, strong tight end like Will Kazmarek. But then later on, you've got, again, Bennett Christian out there, Jelani Thurman out there for Travion Henderson's touchdown counter. Like, these guys, the way they keep rolling these tight ends out there, there was a question like, well, who's going to be the starting tight end? And they've got three that they can throw out there at any point in Jelani Thurman, G. Scott, and Will Kazmarek. And now we've continued to see Bennett Christian out there as well. And we know Patrick Gerd, they'll throw him out there at any point as well. And to have 5 tight ends when you weren't sure you had one, and they're playing well in the running game, and they're doing well. I think it's a luxury that doesn't get talked about, that gives you an opportunity to, throw somebody out there in the T formation and add an extra blocker. Not that they need it because it was a quarterback sneak, but they're not always going to be sneaking with that. So it's just an interesting development with this offense, as if they needed anything else.
Well, and I think some validation for your praise of Will Kazmarek's blocking is the fact that Will Kazmarek was the leader in terms of numbers of snaps for the Buckeye tight ends on Saturday. 25 for him, 21 for Jelani Thurman, 17 for G. Scott, 12 for Bennett Christian, 9 for Patrick Gerd. That, according to our friend Dan Hope from 11 Warriors. But that's what they're looking for. They threw the ball to Kazmarek a couple times. One was complete, one was incomplete. But you got to be able to block. You have to be a reliable, solid blocker if you want to play. And that the fact that he is getting the most snaps right now tells me he is kind of TE1 right now. Mm-hmm. And being a blocker is a big part of that. I did want to get to the T formation. I'm glad you brought it up there. Just ran one snap of the goal line. Will Howard, QB sneaks it in. But that was something, you go back to the spring game and they lined up in the T formation. It was the first play of the game. And then after the game, Chip Kelly talked about it and said, it's just a little homage to Woody Hayes. But he's got all this stuff in his bag. It turns out that was not just a fun little thing that they have, that they did for a little tip of the cap to Woody Hayes. That's something we've seen out of Penn State a bunch in recent years, mm-hmm. where they'll get into 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1 or 3rd and goal from the 1, and they'll just line up in that T formation. And it feels like it almost always works, just because you can really outnumber the opponent with the blocker. Blockers, you have a number of options in terms of misdirection. And sometimes it can just be window dressing like it was in this case. So I just thought that was an interesting, little bit different look from Chip Kelly, who has introduced a bunch of really different stuff for Ohio State this year.
Yeah, Tom, I will say the T formation that is in the EA Sports game in Ohio State's playbook. So this is a very dedicated video game. Okay,
that is tremendous commitment to the bit, and that's something that, boy, you get the sense that Ryan Day would probably love to prove a point when it comes to the Michigan game and, getting called soft and all that kind of stuff. I will tell you what, I'm going to say Ohio State scores a touchdown out of the T formation against Michigan this year. That will be one of my bold predictions for that game. Just feels like that's something that Ryan Day may want to prove a point, and that might be one way to do it.
I don't know if it'll be bold by the time they've done it like 13 times before then. So might have to.
That's why I'm getting it on record early.
We may have to do some negotiations on that one. Can I talk about Donovan Jackson back? Sure. And better than ever, and really, really powerful at the point of attack in this one, and was leading plays. He was opening up lanes for his running backs. Pass protection was there. Just a guy that was having a ball out there and really, really forceful at the point of attack, strong as ever. And you could see what they were missing when he wasn't out there. Even though the running game was great last week or 2 weeks ago, it continues to be really, really good. Even the T formation, the touchdown from Will Howard, he basically dives between Seth McLaughlin at center and Donovan Jackson and is in cleanly. There is no need to push him or anything. They created that hole and he took it. So Donovan Jackson being back, we talked about how it was, can help the communication and this and that. It also helps with the butt kicking portion of this, as we saw. And then the offensive line that they've got now, Chip Kelly can do so many different things. Like whatever he wants to do, he has the athletes on the offensive line to do it. It's like there's some things like, well, no, our guys can't get out that far, or we can't always pull from here, and this guy's not the best at that. They've got guys that can do whatever you need, and they also have the running backs that can do whatever you need. Right now, they've got the quarterback that can read it and execute it. Receivers are out there blocking, Tom. So, and the tight ends, if we haven't mentioned them. But it all starts with Donovan Jackson.
Yeah, getting him back felt like they were fine without him, but getting him back felt like that just really gives them the luxury of having Austin Sierreveld and Tate Grishabola to just be able to rotate at right guard and both take snaps and get some experience and get ready and continue to develop and get them prepared for if they do lose Donovan Jackson or Tate Grishabola or Austin Sierreveld again at some point in the future. But yeah, having him back, he's another guy who he's just been around long enough that I think everyone just kind of takes him for granted. He doesn't play one of the real glamour positions. He's not the left tackle who's going to be a top 5 pick in the next draft or anything like that. He's just a guy who's been in there, who's started long enough that everyone kind of goes, oh yeah, he's good, and moves on. But yeah, definitely someone who is a difference maker for them up front. And it feels like the left side of that offensive line, they feel a lot better about than the right side of that offensive line. An awful lot of the long runs, maybe almost all of the long runs came over the left side of the offensive line. Josh Simmons has been very good this year. Donovan Jackson was very good on Saturday. Seth McLaughlin has been consistently very, very good. So yeah, I think they're feeling pretty good about the left side of the offensive line so far. One of the runs that came over that left side of the offensive line was the 86-yarder by Quinshon Judkins, and it really struck me how small the hole was. They had a couple double teams up front. They created a crease, but this was not. Sometimes there's a picture of the crease, and I can crop the photo real wide and not have anyone other than the running back in it. There are times when the hole looks like that. This was not one of those. This was a crease. Quinshon Judkins knew where he was supposed to go, hit the correct hole, hit it hard, and as soon as he got through there, just boom, he was gone. It was a little like the maybe the Ezekiel Elliott 85-yard touchdown against Alabama, where he, that was not a hole you could drive a Mack truck through, but he hit it hard and just burst through. And then as soon as he burst through, you went, oh, he's gone. And it was kind of the same thing with Quinshon Judkins there. He was so good. He just did a little bit of everything. He showed you the burst of speed to get away. He showed you the stiff arm to hold defenders off. He broke tackles. He stayed on his feet. He absorbed some contact, stayed on his feet, got the extra few yards. Seemed like he was constantly falling forward. He is, TreVeyon Henderson had a good game. TreVeyon Henderson averaged 12.7 yards a carry or whatever it was. But TreVeyon Henderson at this point is, you feel like you sort of know what they have with him. Like, you know what it looks like when TreVeyon Henderson is healthy, and it looks like that, and it's a really good real running back, and it's a huge piece of their offense. But having another guy who's in that averaging 12 yards a carry kind of boat and picking up the tough yards and breaking tackles and not going down on first contact, having two guys like that is an incredible luxury for this team that is probably going to, number one, if they have an injury, you have another one, so then you're not, you don't have a huge drop off there. But number two, being able to split the carries between the two of them probably keeps both of them closer to 100%, just in terms of the general wear and tear of the season, which means you're more likely to have both of them by the end of the season than you would be if you were just leaning on one guy to do, carry the mail, be the bell cow guy, as Kirk Herbstreit will always say.
Yeah, they've got a couple of bell cows. James Peoples only has 2 fewer carries than TreVeyon Henderson right now. Like that's how few that's how little work that TreVeyon Henderson is getting because the games are lopsided and, there's just not a lot of need and they're doing other things and other guys are hitting home runs. Like he's in there and it's like, oh, somebody else just scored. Emeka Ibuka goes 62 yards or whatever it is on a TreVeyon Henderson drive. And it's like, well, come on back out for the next drive because, we didn't get dressed up for nothing, as they say. Let's go ahead and get you some work. It's really fun watching both of those guys right now. And TreVeyon Henderson, the way he's picking his legs up, he's high stepping here and there, and it reminds me a little bit of Robert Smith back in the day. But he's running through traffic and vision is there, and these counters I don't know, maybe some rules against it because it's really effective. Like the national championship game, Ohio State against Oregon, when they were running the counters with Ezekiel Elliott, and it's like Oregon could do nothing with it. They're getting some of that stuff where it's just, and then to cut back with the counter, and you've just got defenses' heads spinning with both of those guys. And at some point, TreVeyon Henderson's going to carry the ball 13 times in the game. I'm just saying it. I'm going to throw it out there. At some point, he's going to get more carries than he's going to know what to do with it. He's like, whoa, I can't have this 14th carry. You're trying to run me into the ground. And, I thought maybe this past week would be his big day and he would get the 86-yarder. It's coming. There's going to be, the 40 would have been 86 if they were at the 16 or the 14 when they got it. But it's just fun to see him having so much fun. And you can tell that he is. And just running behind that offensive line. So that was another one of my notes was just TreVeyon Henderson having fun.
He does seem like he's having fun. And those guys both seem like they are genuinely happy for each other. Like you can usually tell sometimes when you're splitting time with a quarterback or something, the other quarterback will be a little mopey on the sidelines if the backup comes in and leads the team right down for a touchdown. Those guys do seem genuinely happy for each other. And part of that is probably they both got 2 touchdown runs on Saturday. So there was plenty of yards and plenty of touchdowns to go around on Saturday. And TreVeyon Henderson, who has not been able to stay healthy for a number of seasons at Ohio State, he knows not having as many carries, not having as many miles on those tires is only going to help him stay healthy longer in the season. So that's something you can figure out pretty easily why he would be happy about that.
And real quick, Tom, he and Quinshon Judkins right now both tied for the active lead nationally in career touchdown rushes.
Wow, that's quite interesting. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch them watch play out. I also liked at the end of the game they had a graphic on the broadcast or the third quarter of the game. Ryan Williams of Alabama and J.J. Smith of Ohio State. The stat comparison of the two, and they put up very very similar numbers through 3 games. That's going to be a really fun thing to watch over the course of the season because as much as Ohio State coaches are going to tell you we don't pay attention to that, they probably pay some attention to that. So I think that'll be something that there'll be a fun thing to track over the course of the season, along with the race for the career touchdown record or lead, I guess. How about, well, boy, I've got a bunch, Tony. How about I do this Tim May style and give you like 4 quickies here? How about that? So how about the secondary? Great discipline from them to not fall for the wide receiver pass where they ran kind of the end around and then the wide receiver is setting up for a pass. And there was no reason to just expect that they would do that. But they obviously good coverage downfield, just very, that's what you need. You need to not give up the big play. You need to just do your job. You need to not try and do too much. That was, I think, a good discipline play. One thing that was interesting to me was the only play that Marshall got that was over 17 yards was on a 23-yard perception. That was one of the few times that Ohio State brought the linebackers. And, people were saying they should bring more pressure. They were keeping everything in front of them and just sort of being kind of plain and vanilla. And when they did bring pressure, they got beat on it. So that's probably part of why they didn't do that. A couple special teams notes, Tony. They were kind of griping on the broadcast about the fact that Marshall got called for not having the correct number of players on the line of scrimmage on that punt that negated the Brandon Ennis muff that negated what would have been a huge play for Marshall. the problem, you look at it and it's like, well, are these guys on the line of scrimmage or not? Because they're right next to each other. So either they're not on the line of scrimmage and they have 6, which is a penalty, or they are both on the line of scrimmage, which is 8, which is also a penalty. So they were kind of griping about that on the broadcast. And it was like, well, I mean, the only thing I can tell you with a great deal of certainty is they don't have 7 guys on the line of scrimmage, which is what you're supposed to have. So yeah, that was kind of a weird one. Let's see how close they came. I didn't realize how close they came to forcing a fumble on that opening drive. That was, I saw it, and they forced the fumble on that opening drive. Ball really, the 2 guys, was it Ransom and Styles, I think, or Downs and Styles, were diving for it and might have knocked it out of each other's hands and out of bounds. You have that. You have the fact that the touchdown right before the half, the guy stepped on the back of the goal line and they just didn't have a clear enough TV angle to overturn it. Ohio State was not that far away from giving up 0 touchdowns. Now they did. They gave up 2 touchdowns, but you have one of those, the bounces go one way or the other. They could have given up 21 points on that muff. They could have given up 3 points or 6 points on the other 2 plays. So yeah, there's sort of a spectrum of outcomes we're talking about here, and not necessarily, 14 is probably a little bit on the bad bounce side for Ohio State, all things considered. The kickoffs, Tony, all the out of bounds kickoffs, did you notice they kept getting shorter? It was like one was at the 10 and the next one's at the 15. The third one went out of bounds at like the 20. So I don't know. I mean, Ryan Day said something about a hip strain or something. If you were hurt, yeah, maybe. If you were also just trying to aim it, that also might be why you'd be. So I don't know. I don't know which one it was. I just thought that was interesting that they kept getting shorter. Austin Snyder came in and immediately kicked one a yard or 2 deep, and then the second one kicked it 8 yards deep. I think you just should kick the ball 8 yards deep and not try and get too cute with that, because you're looking to gain 6 yards of field position, except if you screw it up, then it's 10 yards of field position. So, and the last one, Tony, can we talk about the ceiling in the broadcast booth? When they had those cutaways to Gus and Joel up in the booth, it looks like, it looks like, I don't know, bombed out is the right word. It's like all the ceiling tiles are missing. I don't know what the deal is, if they had a leak in there or what, but, and I'm sure some of it is they're running wires or whatever, but it looks terrible, and they should find another broadcast angle or another camera angle, because that looks terrible.
This is something I saw on Twitter popping up last year. People, like Buckeye fans, very angry that this looks like crap. And I saw people tweeting at Ross Bjork, like, look at this, like, do something about this. This looks horrendous. And I'm sure Ross is like, why do they have to use this camera angle? Why? Don't show the ceiling. You're supposed to look at the wall, look at the eye level. Like, don't, but yeah, I mean, that one, it does not look great. I'm sure the AD's suite and the presidential suite do not have those same ceiling, and there are wires and stuff going where, things like that. That's how it is, in broadcasts and things like that. But, how many others do you see like that are like this? This is very like, I don't know if I want that in my house, that sort of thing. I don't know if I want company over when my ceiling is looking like this. Why don't we just talk out on the porch? In fact, let's just talk out by the street, that sort of thing.
Well, the camera angles at Ohio State have always been weird. You're watching the Michigan game and the Ohio State game back to back. The Ohio State camera angle is so much higher. And that's just a function of where the camera deck is in Ohio Stadium. But it's so much higher. And I think it's just, I don't know if the camera angle, it's a Fox thing, because I think when ESPN was there, you would always see the straight ahead camera shot with their green screen background. So I think it's a Fox issue that you're seeing it, but ESPN is not going to be broadcasting games for there for a while. So if Fox doesn't change your camera angle, that ceiling is going to be on TV again this year.
While we're talking about Fox, I thought the story, I don't know if you saw this part or you're fast forwarding, of Quinshon Judkins, the story of Quinshon Judkins telling Gus Johnson he can't wait to have his his game called by Gus Johnson because he never got that being in the SEC. And Gus Johnson just taking it as a real point of pride and I would say a humbling moment as much as that can be for Gus Johnson, perhaps at this stage in his career when he is so beloved by so many and also not liked by so many. At some point, you just got to block all of that out. A couple of other things that I have. Caden Curry on the inside that's where he's always been comfortable at tackle on pass rushing downs in high school. That's where we always saw him. That's where he became a blue chip high school recruit. And I think now that he's big enough to continue doing that in college, you'll see more and more of that on passing downs as long as he doesn't get ejected for leaning in his helmet into the helmet of a ball carrier or quarterback. So I think continue to look at that. He's going to make plays there. That'll help. That's mostly what I got other than that first drive again for Marshall. You can run that drive 10 times and they can make all of those third down conversions 2 times because they were very, very, very close to getting passes batted down and things like that. But again, they did score twice. So I think that's it. Tom, you have nothing left, right?
I think I have nothing left other than I thought it was interesting that Joel Klatt thought that Jeremiah Smith thought the ball was not going to him on the ball that got intercepted. That he thought he was not running as hard. I thought that was an interesting. I did not have a great view of that in terms of before the ball got thrown. So I thought that was an interesting possible explanation because it did not look like he was sprinting hard, but at least at the right off the line of scrimmage. But I also thought that was remarkably good coverage from that corner.
Yeah, no, the corner had position the entire time watching it. Like I was surprised it was thrown. Because he had the inside position the entire time, and then the throw was on the inside. But it kind of, I guess, would remind me of the Jameson Williams stuff where they did just clear him. He would just clear everybody out, and he was the third read in that one, and so maybe he figured, well, the third read in this offense, like when your first read is like Emeka and then your second read is Carnell, you're probably like, this ain't never coming to me because one of those two guys is going to be open, but the coverage was there that neither throw went there. So he was the third read and maybe he just wasn't expecting it, but now that's a lesson. And yet the thing is like, he can jog down the field and if you throw it up to him, I'm still going to like my chances. And that's pretty much what Will Howard said after the game as well. So if you got one guy on him, throw it up, see what happens. Most of the time, it's not going to be an interception. If the second worst thing that happens is an incompletion, you're talking like 30% of the time something bad is going to happen. 70% of the time something wow is going to happen, and you'll take your chances there. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. Hit that thumbs up on the YouTube if you're watching right now. We would appreciate that. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast on all of your podcast platforms, please do so as well. This is the season. We're in the season, so you're getting Buckeye Weekly Podcasts quite a bit now, as you may know. And of course, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you have not yet signed up and become a premium member, please do that. It is the best way to support what we do. We'd love to see you there. And that will do it for us today. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.